Hey y'all, my name is Ann Wyatt. I started my career in workforce development with the state of Kentucky in 2010. That experience ignited a deep passion for manufacturing within me. I started this show hoping to raise more awareness around the bright outlook manufacturing careers have. Join me as I sit down with some of the manufacturing industry's most successful changemakers and learn how they're partnering people with technology. It's time to give people more meaningful work. This is Workforce 4.0. All right, welcome back to another episode of Workforce 4.0. We are so excited today to have Lori Harbour here with us today. Lori is the president and CEO of Harbour Results, Inc., and she spends her time working and consulting small, medium manufacturing companies to kind of develop their talent and do things like career pathing, which is something that we talk so much about on the show. And she just wrote a book as well called Tradition Meets Transformation: Leadership Strategies to Revitalize Manufacturing. Lori, we're going to get into all of that today. We're so excited to have you on the show, but welcome. Do you want to give an introduction of yourself and get us started here today?
Sure, I will do that. Thank you, Ann, for having me. I appreciate it. Well, I'm Lori Harbour, President and CEO of Harbour Results. I have been kind of in this consulting space for my whole career. So I've had the great fortune of starting my business through my father, Jim Harbour, who is now deceased, but he was really a manufacturing zealot who taught me pretty much everything I know. And hopefully I've taken a little further than that. And then started a business called Harbour Results in 2009. So our 15-year anniversary here this year with my partner, Scott Walton, and him and I are the ones who had the crazy thought about writing a book and really passionate about manufacturing in this country. And how do we keep manufacturing alive, and how do we get more people excited about manufacturing, starting in the young age of school, and being able to really foster people into this space. And it's tough in today's world and in the economy, but we're continuing to fight the fight every single day. So we're excited to be here and share some thoughts with your listening group about how we can work to all build more manufacturing presence in this country.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's something that we kind of really hit it off in our first initial conversation, was that we're both really passionate about manufacturing. I recognize that about you immediately. I was like, she lives and breathes it. And I do as well. I try to. And I thought that, your insights, especially working from an HR dynamic more so, is quite valuable to a lot of my audience here today. So I appreciate that. I'm going to get into more of that here in a minute. But, my first inaugural question for Workforce 4.0, Lori, do you like music?
I love music. It is my passion. My daughter's in the music industry. So,
Really?
yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. That's amazing. I'm a huge fan of music as well. And I've got to ask you, what is your favorite song or your favorite karaoke song?
Oh, I don't do karaoke. My favorite artist, hands down, is Pink.
Yes! Yes! We love Pink.
She's the embodiment of, breaking every rule and being your own person and going after stuff. So I've been to every concert and every show and take my daughter there. And yeah, I mean, music has been in every personality test I've ever taken. It has come up as my number one thing. It's what, soothes my brain. And I did it with my kids from the time they were babies. And she grew up and said, forget that engineering thing. I want to be in music. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing considering what I'm in, but I love that she's in music. So
I love that too. Yeah, I mean, music is an amazing career path to be in. I wish sometimes I'm an avid shower singer
yeah.
and I do karaoke. But what is your favorite Pink song? Because so I'm really thinking about the next time doing karaoke. I've said that so many times in recording this past season, but I'm like, I really want to do a Pink song.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know. There's so many. I always get a new one when she comes out with it, but I love What About Us? Gosh, there's so many. I love the one, I can't even think of the name of it, where she spins down and goes in the water and cut glitter in the air or something like that. So
Yeah.
there's so many. There's so many. Too many good ones to name.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking Raise Your Glass. I think I can pull.
Yeah. That's a
maybe.
great one too. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love that you love Pink. You were the first guest on Workforce 4.0 that has come on and is like, "I love Pink."
I love Pink.
I love
Yeah.
Pink too.
Well, I mean, she's a good role model for our girls to be who we need to be, and her music says that too. So it's cool. I love it.
It is. Excellent choice. Excellent choice, Lori. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
And speaking of, I know you said your daughter went, towards music as a career path. And you're kind of in this role where you're more HR consulting at this point, but you didn't start out in HR from
No, I frankly started out in manufacturing right out of the gate. My really quick story is that I ran around with my father when I was between 7 and 11. I ran around with him on every Saturday morning down to a Chrysler plant in the middle of Detroit. And he was the head of manufacturing, and he had to go check the plant every Saturday morning. So he took me with him. We walked the plant. I loved it. Every day I would get in the car on the way home and say, Dad, I want to be in manufacturing. I want to make stuff. And he would tell me, no, 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 no. And finally, when I got old enough and smart enough to ask, I said, why? And he said, manufacturing is no place for a girl. And at that day, he lit the fire in me that I was going to go do that. And to the day he died, he realized what he did. And I don't know that he realized in the moment, but he knows that he set me on a path to make an impact in manufacturing. And he taught me so much about manufacturing, but most of all, he said, we have to make an impact every day. And being a consultant isn't about making money, it's about making an impact, and all that stuff will come later. And that's just kind of the mantra that we have lived on. It's a value of our business, is just do whatever it takes to help people be better and teach them. And so we're still doing manufacturing today. I'm still in manufacturing all the time, but I'm really trying to make an impact in the labor side of things and in HR and how we view HR and
yeah.
how we get people excited about staying in manufacturing, because it's a tough environment. Today we're at 3.5% unemployment. The people can't find people that want to go into manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, we are competing in manufacturing, we are competing with all of the industry sectors too. And I mean, really,
Mhm.
it's just it's just a numbers game, right? I mean, we have this resources being personnel, being people, and we are competing with all of these other industries. And we have to figure out a way to do that effectively and to get people more passionate and excited about manufacturing. So I love that. I
Mhm.
appreciate what you're doing because it's also very important and close to my heart as well. That's the basis of Workforce 4.0, right?
Right.
I think it's really cool that you also want to kind of integrate these two professions, right? I think it's cool that you have that manufacturing ops experience and you are trying to build that bridge with HR. What are some of the challenges that you face when you're trying to do that, and how can we get better at that as an industry?
Yeah. I think the thing that frustrates me the most on the HR side is that companies view HR as a administrative function. They don't view it as a strategic function. So we oftentimes go into plants where we have people who are much more of an administrative person, and that's not me digging on administration people. They're very important, but they may not have the education or the experience or the strategic view of labor. And so we're in processing and trying to recruit. We're calling the temp agency. We're putting policies and procedures together. And very few times do we see that there's an HR manager that has a strategic planning focus that sits on the executive team next to the president. And frankly, in my mind, HR manager is the second most important person in the plant next to the operations manager. And instead, we have the operations manager walking in going, hey, I need another person on third shift. And not thinking about how do we develop a talent plan that says we have to train them, we've got to do skill development, we should do cross training. How do we take marketing and use it for more than sales? Use marketing to attract our people,
Mhm.
and most of all, I mean, I go into HR managers and I talk to them about these challenges. I had an example one day in Michigan of $100 million company. I'm talking to the HR manager and she said, I can't keep people. And I said, why? And she said, come with me. And we walked out on the floor and it was the dirtiest, darkest, dangerous place I had been in years. And she said, do you think people want to work here? Why would they want to work here? And back to the point you made a minute ago, it's because around the corner was an Amazon distribution center paying $1 more an hour. So now I used to think I would be competing between stamping and molding and die casting across the street in some industrial space. But now I'm competing with McDonald's and Amazon and everybody else. So like you said, other industries. So we have to get an HR manager that can really help us market the company, clean up the company, and then help people understand why manufacturing is cool and why technology is something that they get to have the opportunity to play around with. Because that's how companies are today, right?
Right. I feel like that is such a missed observation. And I don't understand why. I mean, I do, because technology is a capital investment. It's if you don't have the right correctly trained workforce to operate it and maintain it, it's frustrating.
Right.
If everything doesn't talk to each other, it's very frustrating, right? So I understand why there's some hesitation there, but I mean, it is such an opportunity to really kind of, like you're saying, market to the different generations and different industries of manufacturing and of the workforce, but also, it enables your workforce. So if you do have that plan in place, like you're talking about, then there's an opportunity to bring in other individuals from different industries and be able to train them a lot more rapidly and give them that path forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this generation that is now becoming the buying power of our country they grew up on technology, right? I mean, I didn't. I mean, I didn't know what a phone was until I was having children, right? So this group grew up on technology. They don't like inefficiency. They want to drive efficiency, which frankly is what we need in manufacturing today. So being able to turn them loose on the opportunities and let them drive some of the technology advancement that we can have, that's what we mean by tradition meets transformation, right? We have this incredibly smart, experienced, capable older generation that will be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. And they got stuff to work, right? They made parts easily, they problem solved, they had no issues, but without technology. So now this new generation comes in and they have a very bad stigma because, we had times when some certain younger generation folks just don't want to come in and work hard or stay past noon, or they thought manufacturing was dirty. Well, frankly, some of the plants we're in are dirty, right? So, there's lots of reasons why they didn't come back day two. But the reality of the situation is there are a lot of very hardworking young people who want to be in this space, but they don't want to be diminished. They want to be heard. And they've got ideas that technology can help really take to the next level. So we can find a way to embrace that new generation of ideas and technology with this experience that we can't lose, because we do need to figure out how to make a press work. And if those two can come together in a way that allow them to respect each other and learn from each other, we can take manufacturing to the next level. But unfortunately, some of my generation just dismisses them. And that's the wrong thing to do at this point.
Yeah, I know one of your expert topics that you talk about a lot is succession planning. And that kind of leads into that conversation about succession planning. But maybe for those that are listening today that are not familiar with the concept of succession planning, because this is something that I first heard, in a local SHRM meeting. Can you talk a little bit more about what succession planning is and why it's instrumental to keeping not only your operations moving forward, but also building that talent pipeline?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people think succession planning is just about making sure that there's somebody who's going to step in for the president when they retire or when something happens to them.
I hear that a lot.
Right. The truth of the matter is it goes all the way down the organizational structure. So the best example in the world I can share with you. So we had a client down in Tennessee, big stamper of metal parts for the automotive industry, and their entire engineering department got together and bought a lotto ticket. Well, they won to the tune of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, guess who didn't show up the next day? All 16 of their engineering department. It's called the 20, I think it was, called the Tennessee 20. They won and they all retired because they got millions on an individual basis. So that whole company got upended and there was no succession plan around who was going to take on these roles. And so we've had clients who have had unexpected deaths of engineering managers or ops managers. And if we don't have someone that we're bringing up in the organization, it creates a major hole in the company. But more importantly, and I know that's an important thing, but I guess in addition, maybe not more importantly, is that you're bringing in these new, younger generation people who have ideas and capabilities. And we need to link them with that experienced person. Let that experienced person teach them the how do I get the press running? The how do I do critical thinking and problem solving when we've got an issue here? You understand the data. I don't. So you bring me that, but then I'll teach you how to read that data and how we then react to that data. That's how we bring this next generation into operations and into manufacturing and get them excited about it because we listen to them. We don't disrespect them and we bring them in. That succession planning is the only way these companies survive long term in an environment where our industrial base is being attacked by low cost countries. And if we can't attract them and bring them in, then we won't survive long term. We'll eventually just have to close the doors because we won't have enough of the next generation to run the plant after everybody retires.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really valid concern. And I mean, there have been use cases where I think that's happened. But, and I think that more so from an operations perspective and maybe like a leadership perspective, even is, one of the most frustrating things for me. I remember when I was starting out in my career in my 20s, one of the most frustrating things for me being a young person trying to learn a new role was there's a call, and I just did some research on this because I was looking into it for something that I'm doing. But critical thinking is one of the highest, identifiable skill sets, soft skill sets that are in the highest demand in manufacturing right now. But I think that we take it for granted in the fact that we kind of expect that from younger people. And I think one of the most frustrating things for me being younger in my 20s, starting out in a career was not, experience adds a lot to that critical thinking. And so, for me, I think we have to really have a conversation about like critical thinking is development.
I agree.
No one in their 20s is going to come in your front door and start working on your plant and necessarily have that ability to critical think, and kind of, I want to know what your thoughts are on fostering that skill and how we do that successfully.
Yeah, I mean, that is, I agree with you completely, probably the biggest opportunity for future growth. And the problem with our legacy companies, or what I call tribal knowledge companies who are not accepting the younger generation, is that they're not doing that critical thinking, or they're not making it making it capable to do. In other words, they're not setting the environment or the culture in place to drive it, right? So some of the best companies we work with, their ownership has said, look, we're going to have, regular creative thinking discussions. So some of them will have a once a month or once a week kind of lunch in the lunchroom and bring in pizza and bring in a cross section of the team, some of the older generation, some of the newer generation, and ask some open-ended questions. What do we do really well here? What do we not do so well here? And get the feedback from both sides of the equation. So they're fostering an environment that allows for that. Too often, the problem in manufacturing is, all right, we went through the plant going, we got a problem, we got to solve it. And They run without thinking about what the best ways are, instead of pulling the team together, stepping back and saying, hey, I don't have the answer here. And that's really driven by leadership. Too often leaders believe they have to be the smartest person in the room, and they don't. They just need to bring together the people who are smart and let them, foster an environment that allows them to have the discussion. And it also means when you have that discussion with the experienced and the not so experienced, we have to make sure that we coach the experience that no idea is a bad idea. We have to be open-minded to what comes out, and we have to seek to understand. So ask questions and learn from both sides. If we don't allow the younger generation to look at the data and go, well, gosh, this doesn't seem right. What if we do this? If we just go, oh, we've tried that, it doesn't work. We're not fostering creativity. So we have to set ground rules, have meetings, bring the generations together. And there are ways to teach the younger generation techniques of creative thinking, but you're right, they need experience. But we always joke in consulting that the only reason that we feel capable to stand on the stage, or even when we wrote the book, was to say we've made so many mistakes that we're showing you what mistakes we made, so that other people hopefully learn from that, right?
Yeah, no, that resonates for me as well. Yeah. I mean, that's and that's an important piece of it. And realizing not only that, but recognizing coachable employees
Mhm.
as well. But no, that's great stuff. And I appreciate that. Going back kind of to succession planning, that's kind of the basis of your book, Tradition Meets Transformation: Leadership Strategies to Revitalize Manufacturing. That's kind of the basis of your book, right?
Right.
What kind of inspired you to write a book? That's something that I would love to do one day, but I love the concept behind the book, and I'd love to know more what your inspiration was.
Yeah. Well, as I sit here at my desk looking at a picture of my father, I have to say that really was the inspiration. As he was nearing the end of his life, he said to me, you've done more than I did ever in the years that I did. And which isn't really true, but that was his feeling at the time. And he said, I want you to take what you've learned, and I want you to make a difference in North American manufacturing. And I want you to figure out how you can get the world to connect on hiring this younger generation. And so with that passion and my partner's passion about, sort of giving back, I mean, for us, it's never really been about consulting and making money. It's just not what drives me as a human being. It drives me, I kind of espouse to the 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝘀, what's your why? And my why every day is about making an impact in people's lives, right? So that could be in my work, but it could also be in my children, or in my relationships. So in doing that and in living that, it was really about how do we're watching every day and collecting data every day on our industrial base being attacked and losing companies left and right that just don't, third, fourth generation companies that just can't survive. And I don't want to give up this industrial base. It's what our country was built on. And it's what, when you look at the demographics of the younger generation, when my son, for example, who's now 30, growing up, we all pushed our kids to college. In the state of Michigan,
Oh,
where
yeah.
I'm from, in the state of Michigan where I'm from, 4 kids went to college. An average of four kids went to college, and I'm sorry, 3 to 4 kids went to college. 1 of them graduated. So we all sent our kids to college, but only 1 graduated. And a lot of those ones are not working in the field they went to school for. And our school counselors and our educators are driving that behavior as well. And I have a son who's a tool maker, and he's damn good at it. And he's good at it because that's where his brain was, right? It was not
Mm.
about learning and being an engineer, although in his head, he's a better engineer than I ever could have been, or any of the people I went to school with, because he sees in 3Ds and he knows how to make a mold, an injection mold.
That's
So,
amazing. That's a really hard that's hard. That's a
right,
hard skill set to learn.
right. And in year 2 out of high school, he made 70 grand. When was that a bad career, right? It's higher than the average that is made in the 70% of the population of our country. So that kind of stuff is what really led to our passion to make an impact. And as I see the industrial base slip away, I always joke, I got to try to boil the ocean, even though I probably never achieve it, but we got to have a big, hairy goal somewhere, right?
I think if we all try that, if we all try to boil the ocean, then
It could work.
it could work, right?
Right.
I love that story about your son. Yeah, being a tool maker is, I mean, it takes a pretty high skill set.
Yeah.
And that speaks volumes about the opportunities for manufacturing out there for the younger generation right out of high school. Not everyone has to go to school.
Right.
I went to school. I was part of that generation.
I did too.
But I graduated with a degree in communications and public administration,
Mhm.
and I recruit. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, what do you do?
Yeah,
Um,
and I think school's important. Don't get me wrong. I'm very focused on that, but it's not for everyone, and
uh-uh.
there are so many good careers out there that really can build Middle America and keep Middle America strong. And I think we've got to refocus on that and make sure that our kids have good jobs.
How do we engage the schools at that level without, in a collaborative way?
Yeah.
What do you think the key is?
It's really tough. It's really tough. I've tried to talk to educators. I've gone around to certain schools. I'm actually, going to continue kind of a new strive of that later this year in doing some presentations on the book to show people where within the education system are we missing the mark. In my opinion, this is what I say in my presentations today about the book. I first asked the question, how many of you are in manufacturing? Everybody raises their hands
Mhm.
because I'm in a manufacturing audience. How many of you have kids in manufacturing? That number cuts considerably, right? And then I ask, how many of you ever took your child into manufacturing when they were young? And then I tell my story about my father taking me to the Chrysler plant. We can't get them excited if we don't show them. And there's not a president, if you are an employee at a manufacturing company, there's not a president of your company that would ever say, no, you can't bring your child to work one day. So we need to do that. We need to, when we're recruiting, a lot of these companies have these, bring the young kids into work to show them. They
Yeah.
recruit out of the community colleges. We need to bring their parents. We need to bring their parents and show them that these are really good jobs. It's not dirty anymore. It's for the most part, right? It's clean. It's safe. We need to bring them. And then we need to bring educators into, when we have these road shows that we bring kids, we need to bring the school educators in. And we need to show them the math. That son of mine who made 70 grand in year one, guess what? How much debt I have in college? Zero. I have zero debt for him going to school. So, we have to show the parents the math around how well paid these jobs are and how little debt it drives into the long term. I have friends who have 4 kids in college. I couldn't do it.
I dread. So mine's 7. I dread it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just
It's
starting. Hey, what are we,
right.
gotta start a
It's
college fund.
priced so high today. And then when you combine that with how they have to live while they're in college, it's tough. It is very tough.
It is tough. I love the concept of having a community day though with manufacturers because I'm thinking about, and I love your story with your father going to the paint plants in Detroit. Because I did not, that's a big part of my story is that I was not exposed to manufacturing. Both of
Mhm,
my parents worked for the government and public sector and all that. And that's kind of what I grew up and was exposed to.
mhm.
But I remember, and it was through my public sector job that I found the manufacturing industry, and it was during a plant visit. And I just remember, I mean, there's robots. No one told me.
Right? Right.
No one told me about these cool robots and how fast they move and how efficient they are.
Mhm.
And just everything is just, it's like clockwork watching it. It's all going on at one time. And I can imagine taking my kiddo who is 7 on a plant floor and him just losing his mind.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that is a good age. And that's a fun age for that.
That's when I started. It's a great age because you walk around and you're just in awe of it, right? And for me, it was about making stuff. Like I always tell my clients, do your people and your employees on the floor know where their part goes? Like, if I'm making a part for a medical device, do we know that that saves lives? Or if we're making for an airbag on a car, do we understand really where it goes? So it's a really big deal. And in this generation of gamers and technology, I mean, my son's a gamer. He's
Oh
like,
yeah.
give me a CNC machine. I can program that thing. I love it. Right. So you're
Mhm.
now being handed $1 million piece of equipment. And it's your job to keep it running. So we got to teach them manufacturing is cooler than ever. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. You've just got to keep pushing it and spreading the good word. So, and with that, I know that you are doing a lot of shows and you're doing a lot of public speaking events. And if there's ever an opportunity to meet you, where are some of your upcoming speaking events that you'll be at?
We've gotten through quite a bit of them already this first quarter, but we do a lot of events with associations, the Precision Metal Forming Association, the MAP Plastics Association, tooling venues, and things of that nature. We're really kind of at the end of it, but we have a very big event in Detroit in October. It's an event that we do on October 23rd, and we talk about manufacturing and the automotive industry. And our team is really all over the country doing presentations and talking about manufacturing. And so it's all over our social feed at harborresults.com, and we publish those. But it's a great opportunity. We have really blessed to be able to present to a lot of different companies on manufacturing, and it's super exciting for us. And now we got to get into some of those public sectors. And we were at the Federal Reserve last Friday and spoke to Jerome Powell and about manufacturing in this country. That was super
Nice.
interesting.
That
So
is really cool.
yeah, it was really cool. My colleague Kara Walton spoke there, and it was just great. It was their effort to learn how interest rates are affecting manufacturing, and I thought that was cool that they want to hear it.
That is cool. What was a big takeaway from that event?
I think there was a ton of things, but they had people from all sectors, so daycare and healthcare, and they had a woman that was a third or fourth generation rancher, and that was so cool because
That's cool.
she's going through the same things we are in manufacturing. She said, "Do you think my 19-year-old son doesn't want to get the heck out of Oklahoma and go do something else? He doesn't want to be a fourth generation rancher, right?" And so some of the same labor challenges, except for, they're in an environment where they work 10, 12-hour days and very manual labor. But I think probably
Mhm.
most interesting was Chairman Powell came up to Kara and I afterwards, and she had shared a data point that said, on average, small and mid-sized manufacturers make 5.2% in profitability last year. And his mouth actually kind of dropped at that. And it was televised on C-SPAN, and you could see it. He came to see us afterwards and he said, "I'm shocked by that number. It's so low." And she said, "Right. That's the challenge in today's market, and why China and low-cost countries are attacking the very breadth of how we built our country, because we can't make enough money. The cost of inflation, the cost of interest rates, the cost of wages, not implying that we shouldn't be getting good wages, but these are important things that are the economy in which we operate in. But you've got China coming in and attacking at all of these lower cost rates. And we're not committed to buy from this country. And so we can't make the profits we need to make. So it was a very interesting takeaway. He thought companies were making double digits in profitability, and that's just not the case.
Oh, that's not a case for most manufacturing companies at all. I mean, I think that's amazing that you were able to get an opportunity to educate him of all. I mean, that's incredible. But I think that's amazing that you got an opportunity to educate him on the importance of manufacturing and where reality, like where we are. And I think sometimes there's a big conversation that we need to have, because I don't think that people realize that either,
Right,
is the amount of competition that we have with foreign companies like China.
right. And it's tough because, he's working to manage our monetary policy, right? So we were in a horrible inflation situation. So that is typically what happens, is interest rates go up to manage that.
Uh-huh.
But as you look forward, those interest rates are going to impede capital investment. So when you talk about technology, And even when you talk about Workforce 4.0, right? I mean, how do we get higher paid wages to operate the technology we're purchasing, but also how do we even buy the next round of technology if interest rates are high? So it's this constant back and forth balance for manufacturing companies.
It is, yeah, and I mean, for your workforce, for it affects the consumer. I mean, it's all the way down to a
Mhm.
consumer level. I don't know about you, but
Yeah,
as a single mother in Alabama here, I am buying. I mean, groceries are high.
yeah, for sure. I
I
mean,
mean,
the majority of our population lives on an average wage, right? Something like 70% of our population. There is a third of our population that is incredibly wealthy, and frankly, they got wealthier through COVID. But the majority of us are really feeling it, whether it's at the grocery store or at the pump to get fuel for your car or to buy a car, right? I mean, the prices are just
or
so
house.
high, and wages have not aligned with the price with the
Mm.
increases of inflation. So it's very tough.
No, it is tough because that puts your companies in a real bind because I will say wages are not in line, but people are making more than they ever possibly have in
Right.
manufacturing. I mean, wages have gone
Right.
up tremendously. So there's a huge misalignment there because you're maxing these small medium enterprises out on pay, right? On salary
Right.
capabilities and then recruiting and retaining. And it comes down to back to okay, if I can go work for a large mega corporation like Amazon or
Mhm.
SpaceX or whatever and make, way more than I was making at this smaller manufacturing company, then it would make sense for me to do that because everything is so high.
Right.
I mean, for me, as kind of a small town girl from Kentucky originally, and seeing the economic impact that manufacturing can take, losing a plant and things like that, can take on a local economy. You want to keep as much as you can in your local economy because it's going to
Mhm.
fuel the local economy. It's going to, trickle up in this case to the state economy, and it's going to build a better, more sustainable life for everyone in your community.
Absolutely. The best example of that's '08 and '09, and I'm from Detroit. So when the industry in automotive, not to say that it didn't around the rest of the country, but when automotive took a tank, 80% of Detroit and the suburbs around us are automotive based.
Yep.
The whole economy was in depression. We lost restaurants and bars and grocery stores and everything, right? And the city of Detroit, which was already had a bad name, got even worse, right? And so with economic boom between 2010 and 2021, the city has revived itself. But it's very critical, very crucial. And one thing we haven't talked about, but is so important to this labor piece is the culture of your company, right?
Mm.
And we have data that shows that people chose not to leave for another dollar more across the street because they knew the culture of their company was not what it was across the street. So, SpaceX or Tesla or some of these,
Yep.
or even Amazon, right? Lots of discussion about, yeah, I can make more, but do I love that culture? And is it a family where I feel comfortable and I'm not, being treated disrespectfully? So it's another core thing we talk about in the book is that if you can build the culture, it's a major retention point. Because if you can't always afford that extra dollar, you've got to have something else that keeps them there.
What are some of your tips for building a better culture?
Well, probably the biggest weakness is we start out right out of the gate. I mentioned one is clean your plant up. You don't keep your
Yeah.
house. You don't keep your house that way. Don't
Yeah.
if you walk in and go, I wouldn't let my kid work here, then you probably need to clean the plant up, right? So that's one of the first biggest things. Make yourself a showcase that you can put pictures on your website and you can market through your social media where these younger generation people look and go, oh yeah, that looks like a place I'd like to work. But the second thing is we kill it at the onboarding stage, right? So we bring them
Yep.
in and we go, here's your safety glasses. Dan's out there on press 3. Go see him and he'll teach you that's where you spend the rest of your day. And they get out there and Dan goes, here, watch me put this piece of metal in.
It's
And
not
then
engaging at all.
not engaging at all. And nobody checks on if they make it past day 1 or lunch, Nobody checks on them, nobody follows up. So one of my clients said, hey, I'm having a turnover problem at one of their plants, and we worked on some onboarding strategies because that's exactly what they were doing. And now the president goes around every Friday, and his job for the first 90 days of anybody's employment is to go up to them and talk to them. How are you? How's your family? What do you like about your job? What do you hate about your job? What can I do to help you? Is there anything you need? If you could change one thing about what you're doing, what would you do? And he does that every single week to the same people, not different people. So if he's got 60 temps in the plant, he's talking to 60 people, and it takes him all day. And their retention went, their turnover went from 30% to 2% in 1 year.
Nice.
And it's because somebody cared. Now, there's another layer, right? His supervisor has to go by and check him on a more frequent basis. And they may assigned a team mentor as well. So this person's getting asked, what would you change? Not just a number in the books, are you safe? But what would you do different? Well, how can we fix this? Now, maybe I can't fix everything, but I'm going to try, and I'm at least going to listen to you. And I have another client who lives by the motto of know everybody's name. They have a name. They're not just a number, they're a name. And he has 780 people that work for him, and he knows the name of every single one of those people.
I
And
love that.
it makes a huge difference for him and his plant. His retention is very, very high. So it's sometimes as president, and I'm one, right? Sometimes we get in our day-to-day mix and we don't think that the real profit comes from the people who work for us. And if we engage in them, then they're going to make a difference for us and our company.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a huge thing that can easily improve your retention rates is giving people that validation and that time and that, accessibility
Exactly.
from a leadership perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I, like you said, that's hard to do and that's hard to accomplish, especially if you're the president of the company. But it comes down to, so I hear this a lot, it's not always about making everyone happy.
Right.
It's about the fact that you tried,
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't
I
make
love
everybody happy, right?
that. You can't make everyone happy. But if you're there and you're asking and you're listening and you're validating people, because we are all people,
Right.
with feelings, that goes a long way.
Well, and it goes back to that not having to be the smartest person in the room. I tell my team all the time. I may be the one that sometimes is the public face, but I'm only do what I do because of you guys. They do all the work, right? So it's a real shift for people. And remember, we have a lot of older generation owners that are leaving in the next 5 to 10 years, and they weren't necessarily trained that way. So it's hard to be humble when you're in that space. And a lot of them, as they retire, have a hard time retiring. We got to also respect that the older we get, the harder it is to let go, right? And let the next generation take over. So there's a little bit of give and take and respect and understanding that it's hard for us. We kind of feel like we don't know what's going to happen to us if we quit working.
I already resonate with that, though. I'm so funny because in my 20s, I was all about like, maybe I should have like a retirement plan and maybe I should, all these things. And now I'm like, I don't want to retire already. I'm like, this is,
I understand.
What would I do?
Right.
So I get that. I appreciate that.
At the same time, life is short. We got to live it.
That's true.
So
that's true. Yeah.
As you get to my age, you start to hear about a lot of health things that you don't want to hear. So, you got to live it. But it's a balance. It's a good balance, right? And, I work with a lot of young women and try to mentor them in this space because, I'm not a big feminist about like, hey, we just deserve to have jobs because we're women.
Yeah.
I think I think we have to, yes, there's inequity. Don't misunderstand me. There's certainly inequity, but we also have to fight and we have to have confidence. And And not all of us were born and bred with the confidence that we need to make an impact. And what I've seen is that the more confident we are about what we do, the more impact we can make, and we are heard. And so I always try to tell young women, there's opportunities out there. And as manufacturing companies, it's another area we miss culturally and we miss in recruitment, right?
We
We're not
do.
intentionally recruiting women. But the other big thing that I've seen be wildly successful for diversity is we always, like, I literally will have owners say to me, well, I really want to hire a woman. I'm like, first of all, I got to laugh.
I've had hiring managers actually say that verbatim to me.
Right. And
Yeah.
at first I look at them, I go, I have to laugh because you would never say, I really want to hire a
Say
guy.
that. You
Right?
can't say that in the email either. Don't.
Right. Exactly. And so what I tell them is what the best are doing is they're recruiting multiple people of that diversity you're trying to add. So don't just bring a woman into an all male tool shop. Go hire 4 of them.
Right.
Because now it's pack mentality. And I don't mean that to be girls against boys. I mean it to say, I have somebody I can go to and go, man, so-and-so didn't treat me right, or they're not trusting me or whatever. You have a little bit of a camaraderie you can build just like the guys have built. Or if I want to hire some Hispanics, don't just hire one. Go recruit in that space and bring them in together. Maybe if there's a language barrier, one can help the other and they can learn more about it. So we tend
I've seen
to,
that. Yeah.
we try to hire the token diversity. And the truth of the matter is there's data all over the planet that says the more diverse we are, the better and more profitable we are.
And the better product you produce.
Exactly. You talk about critical thinking that you were talking about before. There's no better team than to put a whole mix of critical thinkers together or a diverse people together to come up with critical thinking, because I'm going to think differently than the 70-year-old, guy who's running the plant. Doesn't mean I'm right. Doesn't mean he's right. So I give you one last example, which is I'm doing strategy with a company that had 18 men around the table that were all white and all over 60.
Oh.
And the HR manager stood up and said, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And he put this whole strategic plan together. And I said, at the risk of being kicked out as the facilitator of your strategic plan, I said, I'd like to know how you're going to do that. What are you doing to implement it? What are you changing about what you've done in the past? Because with all due respect, you have 30% turnover and you can't keep diversity. And it probably might have something to do with the fact that everybody around this table that's the executive of the company, 18 of you are 60-year-old white men. And then I went, okay, you can kick me out if you want. Like I was really, but
you're not wrong.
But that's how I lead, because at the end of the day, you didn't hire me to tell me what you want to hear. You hired me to challenge your thinking. And right now, if you don't get diversity on your executive team, when I go to interview with you, I'm looking around the room going, nobody looks like me. And I want to work somewhere where at least 1 or 2 look like me.
Like there's no one that I can have a conversation with about other than work. I mean, people want to, and I'm not saying like, oh, just like, don't take this as recruitment advice of like, oh, just hire your friends. But I mean, people want to work with people that they're friends with.
Exactly.
It gives you a reason to come to work. Like, I mean, for me, being friends and working with other women my age that have kids, I mean, we have a lot of the same challenges, so it's like, okay, well, what are you doing? What are you doing with your kiddo about school routines and sports? And we're living like the same. And they're like, okay, well, I'm doing this, what are you doing?
For sure.
And having these little conversations like that, I mean, no, they're not work related, but they build your culture. They build that unity that you need.
The last round of interview to come and work at Harbour Results is that we take you out to break bread with you, meaning dinner or lunch or something. And I always ask my team before we give an offer, can we go have fun with this person? Would you go to dinner with them? Would you hang out with their wife or their husband? And that's because we want a family member. We want a team member, we want somebody that we feel comfortable that we can have a social life with.
I love that. It's important. Well, thank you, Lori. I know that we are a little past our time today. For those listening in the audience, and this has been such a fantastic conversation, I could keep going, but I do want to be conscious of your time as well. But those in the audience that want to connect with you, what is a good way for them to reach out to you, and how can they get a hold of your book?
Well, the book is available on Amazon. So Tradition Meets Transformation. It's available on Amazon. We also, through our website, harborresults.com is the best probably way to reach me. I, take phone calls and emails all the time. I don't keep anything private. I love to talk to people and learn from people. So you can always get a hold of me through our website. And I hope people will engage in the interest of the book. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff about how we can work together. It doesn't have all the answers, but it's certainly moving us in the right direction.
Excellent. Are you on LinkedIn? Is that a good way to connect with you as
I am
well?
I am on LinkedIn. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm a very avid user of my LinkedIn and try to work hard to post manufacturing that's cool and opportunities there. So both Harbor Results is on LinkedIn as well as Lori Harbour on LinkedIn. So
I love that so much. Okay. So if you're listening, you want to learn more about Lori, connect with her on LinkedIn. Thank you, Lori, so much for coming on and doing Workforce 4.0 today. I really appreciate it. I know you're super busy traveling and doing all that fun stuff, advocating and lighting fires about the industry that we love. But thank you so much for your time here today.
no problem. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And for everyone listening, we will see you next week on Workforce 4.0.